अक्षरमृतं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः चैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतं स्वयं रूपकदामह्यं ददाति स्वपदां वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरू श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगना रघुनाथं तं सजीवं साधवैतं साधुतं हरिजना सहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं हे राधा कृष्ण राधा सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखावतांश्च विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी विशेष धन्यवाद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे reading Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, chapter 1, in text, today we have to start reading from text 48. Okay, we are at canto 6, chapter 1, text 48. मनसैव पुरे देवा पूर्वरूपं विपश्यति अनुमिमां सते पूर्वं मनसा भगवान् च The omnipotent Yamaraj is as good as Lord Brahma, for while situated in his own abode or in everyone's heart like the Paramatma, he mentally observes the past activities of the living entity and thus understands how the living entity will act in future life. One should not consider Yamaraj an ordinary living being. He is as good as Lord Brahma. He has the complete cooperation of the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. And therefore, by the grace of the Super Soul, he can see the past, present, and future of a living being from within. The word Anumimamsate means that he can decide in consultation with the Super Soul. Anu means following. The actual decisions concerning the lives of the living entities are made by the Super Soul and they are carried out by Yamaraj. When a devotee surrenders to Krishna, the Lord empowers the devotee profusely. The Yamaraj is being described here as having so many powers, as well as Lord Brahma, by the mercy of the Lord Paramatma, Lord Vishnu. Yamaraj is residing in the heart of different living entities as well, by the power of Lord Vishnu. And he is cognizant of all the living entities' activities. The whole material world is running after power. But here we see the word being used, proper sati, anumimam sati, which means following. One gets empowered by the Supreme Lord by the attitude and the trajectories of anumimam sati, following, accepting and following. That is what makes our lives meaningful and sublime. That is the point. People are running after power. A devotee doesn't want power. So here it is said, yes, who is Yamaraj? Yamaraj is that surrendered devotee. He is not deciding what should be the course of life of living entities, although he has the power to decide. He has the authority to take decisions. But he is simply taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is making the decision and Yamaraj is executing. What a beautiful principle. It is the Supreme Lord who is taking the decision. Yamaraj is just executing that decision. So we can learn the lesson here that in hankering for power, in chasing after power, one is simply making oneself so the devotee is very nice. Like the Shampoo was once telling. So he went to his sister's place. And in his sister's place, the sister had a son, very small. So Prabhu offered him Peda Prasad. So the son didn't take it. He was looking at his mother. And his mother said, okay, you take it. He gave a signal. Then he happily took it and ate it up. So although for a child the pedophile is very attractive, but he didn't do it. Because he had learned that principle of following. Okay. Similarly, a devotee always looks up to the Supreme Lord. The Lord is telling, okay, take these appliances and do the service for me. The devotee does it. The Lord says, no, leave it. I am not attached. Always be ready and eager to follow the instructions of the Lord, whatever pleases the Lord. That is what Shri Yamaraj is highlighting through his behavior. That is why the Shastras say it is not Yamaraj who is deciding things in our life, it is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, nothing to worry. Even if a punishment is coming, the Lord is only giving. It will be for our purification. And ultimately, it will create an auspicious future and destiny. That is the faith which we should have. So here also it's very directly being said, things are being ordained not by the demigod, but by the Supreme Lord. The demigods are only acting as instruments. Right there. They are only acting as instruments. Everything is ordained by the Supreme Lord. Let's read further. यथात्मस्तमसा युक्ता उपस्थे व्याक्तमेव हि न वेदपूर्वमपारम् नष्टजन्मा स्मृतिस्तथा. As a sleeping person acts according to the body manifested in his dreams and accepts it to be himself, so one identifies with one's present body which he acquired because of his past religious or irreligious activities and is unable to know his past or future life. A man engages in sinful activities because he does not know what he did in his past life to get his present materially conditioned body, which is subjected to the threefold miseries. As stated by Rishabhadev in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4, Nunam pramatta kurute karma. A human being who is mad after sense gratification does not hesitate to act sinfully. Yadindriya pritaya panoti. He performs sinful actions simply for sense gratification. Nasadhu manye, this is not good. Yada atmanoyam asanapi kleshad asadeha. Because of such sinful actions, one receives another body in which to suffer as he is suffering in his present body due to his past sinful activities. It should be understood that a person who does not have Vedic knowledge always acts in ignorance of what he had done in the past, what he is doing at the present, and how he will suffer in the future. He is completely in darkness. Therefore, the Vedic injunction is Tamaso ma, don't remain in darkness, Jyotirgama, try to go to light. The light or illumination is the Vedic knowledge. which one can understand when he is elevated to the mode of goodness. And when he transcends the mode of goodness, or when he transcends the mode of goodness by engaging in devotional service to the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. This is described in the Shvetashakara Upanishad 6.23. यस्य देवे परा भक्तिर्यथा देवे तथा गुरु तस्यैते कथितः अर्थ प्रकाशन्ते महात्मनः. And to those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. The Vedas enjoin that Veganatmam Saguru Vigachet. One must approach a spiritual master who has full knowledge of the Vedas and be faithfully directed by him in order to become a devotee of the Lord. Then the knowledge of the Vedas will be revealed. When the Vedic knowledge is revealed, one need no longer remain in the darkness of material nature. According to his association with the material modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, a living entity gets a particular type of body. The example of one who associates with the mode of goodness is a qualified Brahmana. Such a Brahmana knows the past, present, and future because he consults the Vedic literature and sees through the eyes of the Shastra. Such a Brahmana knows past, present, and future because he consults the Vedic literature and sees through the eyes of the Shastra, Shastra Chakshu. He can understand what his past life was, why is he's in his present body, and how he can obtain liberation from the clutches of Maya and not accept another material body. This is all possible when one is situated in the mode of goodness. Generally, however, the living entities are engrossed in the modes of passion and ignorance. In any case, one receives an inferior or superior body at the discretion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, as stated in the previous verse. Manasa eva pure deva purvarupam vipashyate anumimam sate purvam manasa bhagavanaja. Everything depends on Bhagavan, Aja the unborn. Why doesn't one please Bhagavan to receive a better body? The answer is Ajnana Tamasa, because of gross ignorance. One who is in complete darkness cannot know what his past life was or what his next life will be. He is simply interested in his present body. Even though he is a human body, a person mode of ignorance and interested only in his present body is like an animal. For an animal being covered by ignorance thinks that the ultimate goal of life and happiness is to eat as much as possible. A human being must be educated to understand his past life and how we can endeavor for a better future. There is even a book called Bhrigu Samhita, which reveals information about one's past, present, and future lives according to astrological calculations. Somehow or the other, one must be enlightened about his past, present, and future. One who is interested only in his present body and who tries to enjoy his senses to the fullest extent is understood to be engrossed in the mode of ignorance. His future is very, very dark. Indeed, the future is always dark for one who is grossly covered by ignorance. So, especially in this age, human society is covered by the mode of ignorance, and therefore everyone thinks that its present body to be everything without consideration of past or future. Sinful life is a reckless life, that one is not concerned about anything and anyone. So Krishna conscious life is very responsible life as point. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that one should not keep oneself in the darkness of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada is saying here, the material sense gratification pursuits are being undertaken in the mode of ignorance. That's the Prabhupada is saying, Tamaso Majyotirgamaya. That come to light. And how do we come to light? By taking shelter of a bona fide devotee of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining a devotee should understand that uh, to know about one's past, what kind of dangerous and ghastly desires and ghastly activities you have done. How do we know that? By what desires are lurking inside our heart? What sense gratificatory desires are lurking in our heart? And we can also understand about future. That okay, now I have an opportunity which has been given to me, although I did not deserve it. But if I continue this opportunity, future is very bright. So a devotee understand that if I do not take benefit of this opportunity of Krishna consciousness now, it is going to be such a colossal loss. It will be so unfortunate. So in Ajamil Upakhyan, Srila Prabhupada mentions that a devotee should always remember what he was and by the mercy of Krishna consciousness, what he is made into. That will give gratitude. Gratitude gives commitment. So on one hand, one should be grateful about what one is getting, and on the other hand, one should understand that if I don't take benefit of this opportunity now, it is going to be a very sorry state. Yes, Srila Prabhupada does mention Bhrigu Samhita, where the details of one's past and future lives are mentioned. And one can see also that and as a devotee, we are not interested in very specific details. By the mentality, we can understand what kind of life. Therefore, we see one thing very clearly is being said in this verse is how misleading this identification is. We identify with the present body is as good as a sleeping person identifying with a dream body. It's as good as that. How misleading, how illusory is this sense of identity. So Prabhupada is quoting Nunam Pramatta Kurte Vikarma. It basically that one who is mad after sense gratification, he commits sinful activities. So sense gratification means sinful activities. Therefore, it is being said that Vijnana, Thamsa Guru Mevavikashi. We also have sense gratificatory propensities. But if we approach the spiritual master by following the spiritual master, by committing ourselves to the spiritual master's mission, those impurities will get washed out. So one will no longer be Nunam Pramatta. One will become Ramante Yoginanante, Tushtanti. Let's read further. पंचभी कुरुते स्वार्थान् पंचवेदान्त पंचभी एकस्तु षोडशेनात्रिन् Swayam Saptadasho Ashnute. Above the five senses of perception, the five working senses, and the five objects of the senses is the mind, which is the 16th element. Above the mind is the 17th element, the soul, the living being himself, who in cooperation with the other 16 enjoys the material world alone. The living being enjoys three kinds of situations: happy, distressful, and mixed. But everyone engages in work with his hands, legs, and other senses, just to achieve a certain goal according to his concocted ideas. One tries to enjoy the five objects, namely the form, the sound, the taste, the aroma, and touch, not knowing the actual goal of life, which is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. So, because of disobeying the Supreme Lord, one is put into mental conditions. And he then tries to improve his situation in a concocted way, not desiring to follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nevertheless, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so kind that he comes himself to instruct the bewildered living entity how to act obediently and then gradually return home back to Godhead, where he can attain an eternal peaceful life of bliss and knowledge. The living entity has a body, which is a very complicated combination of the material elements. And with this body, he struggles alone, as indicated in this world by the word ekastu. For example, if one is struggling in the ocean, he must swim through it alone. Although many other men in aquatics are swimming in the ocean, he must take care of himself because no one else will help him. Therefore, this verse indicates that the 17th item, the soul, must work alone. Although he tries to create society and friendship and love, no one will be able to help him but Krishna. The Supreme Lord. Therefore, his only concern should be how to satisfy Krishna. That is also what Krishna wants. Sarva dharman parityaje mamekam sharanam vajaha. People bewildered by mental conditions try to be united. But although they strive for unity among animals, among men and nations, all their attempts are futile. Everyone must struggle alone for existence with the many elements of nature. Therefore, one's only hope, as Krishna's advice, is to surrender to him. For he can help one becoming free from the ocean of nescience. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore prayed, Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Budho Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Yudhuli Sadrisham Vikshintaya. O Krishna, beloved son of Nanda Maharaj, I am your eternal servant, but somehow or the other I have fallen into this ocean of nescience. And although I am struggling very hard, there is no way I can save myself. You see, if you kindly pick me up and fix me as one of the particles at the dust of your lotus feet, that will save me. In a similar way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, Anadi karma phale padibhavar navachale, taribare na dekhi upai. My dear Lord, I cannot remember when I somehow or the other fell into the ocean of the science, and now I can find no way to rescue myself. So we should remember that everyone is responsible for his own life. If an individual becomes a pure devotee of Krishna, he is delivered from the messiahs. So it is mentioned in the purport here, the soul tries to enjoy alone. Srila Prabhupada also, resounded this principle which is being highlighted here. And Prabhupada, so Prabhupada used to say what? Everyone has to fly his own plane. Training, inspiration, clarity, education, that is available. But ultimately, everyone has to fly. So therefore, Prabhupada is echoing that one should take responsibility of one's life and activities. So we can see the messy situation of the living entity in this world is because of disobeying the Supreme Lord. Still, one can repair it by following the instructions of the Lord. Actually, this is an eternal cycle because the whole point is that the Jiva soul he wants sense gratificatory desires, and because of that, there is so the Jiva is hankering, and whether so if and sense gratificatory desires whether fulfilled or unfulfilled, there is going to be lamentation and frustration. If it is unfulfilled, we can understand frustration. If it is fulfilled, one gets the object which one is desiring, but it won't remain for long. So ultimately, there will be frustration. And during the time also it remains, then also there will be frustration because the person will realize that I was hankering for this and I thought I will, no, but the happiness I thought I'll get, that much I'm not getting. Rather, I'm able to see now something else which I have started hankering for. So this hankering lamentation is an eternal trap. Therefore, a devotee, so that is why a devotee helplessly and desperately takes shelter of Krishna. If a proper is quoting Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkaram. So we have to understand, I have to break this hankering because the principle of hankering is, you see, exposure leads to attraction, whether attraction leads to entanglement. So we'll see. Maya strategy is what? Maya strategy is Maya strategy is that Maya only gives us a trailer, and that trailer is very enticing. But the movie is entangling. That is the point. That is the problem with Maya. The trailer is very attractive. So people like a movie trailer. One watches the trailer, one will be forced to see the movie because they're really hankering. So the exposure gives rise to attraction. Therefore, if we give spiritual exposure, one will develop spiritual desires. And spiritual desires, there will be no lamentation. Because whatever one is able to do will come to one's eternal credit. Swalpamapi asya dharyasya tadharmasya trayate mahatopehat. Even a little bit of devotion or service can give one the same result, prema pumartha mahan. It all depends on Krishna. Krishna will see our holistic case study. So there is no lamentation. Oh, why did I do this? No. Rather, the devotee feels that, okay, why did I do only this much service? I should have done more service. Now I'll do more service to Krishna. That's what the devotee feels. So there's no lamentation there. And why did I do this? But in the material world, there is lamentation and frustration. Why? Because whatever the person does, the person will not be satisfied. And therefore, the person will always question, why did I do this? The frustration. In the meantime, he is able to, because his mode, his conditioning will show him something else which he can run after. And this way keeps chasing after hankering lamentation. The cycle can be only broken by Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying, our only business should be to satisfy Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, better to follow the instructions of the Lord. Better to be only focused on around the instructions of the Lord. Then only we can go out of this hankering and lamentation. Yeah. So we need spiritual exposure. And spiritual exposure can only be given by the devotees of the Lord. That is why a devotee, as a sadhaka, one should be hooked to the devotees of the Lord, because they can only provide a spiritual exposure. Exposure leads to attraction, and with spiritual hankering and spiritual attraction, we can counter the material hankering and material attraction. Let's read further. तदेतत्षोडशकालं लिङ्गं शक्तित्रयं महा भाते अनुसंस्मृतिं पुंसि हर्षशोकाभयार्थिदम्. The subtle body is endowed with 16 parts. The five knowledge acquiring senses, the five working senses, the five objects of sense gratification, and the mind. This subtle body is the effect of the three modes of material nature. It is composed of insurmountably strong desires. And therefore, it causes the living entity to transmigrate from one body to another in human life, animal life, and life as a demigod. When the living entity gets a body of a demigod, he is certainly very jubilant. When he gets a human body, he is always in lamentation. And when he gets the body of an animal, he is always afraid. In all conditions, however, he is actually miserable, because his miserable condition is called as samsriti, that is the transmigration to material life. The sum and substance of material conditional life is explained in this verse. The living entity, the 17th element, is struggling alone life after life. This struggle is called samsriti, or material conditional life. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the force of material nature is insurmountably strong. Daivihi yasha gunamai mama maya durasyaya. Material nature harasses the living entity in different bodies, but if the living entity surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes free from this entanglement, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Mameva ye prapadyante mayame tam taranti. Thus life becomes successful. So the import is, of now connecting it to the point which Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the previous purport also. And Prabhupada is saying that one should take responsibility of life. Responsibility of life means what? It means that so it means the conscious, it means to be aware of the consequences of what is going to happen on the material trajectory. It means to be always aware that this very attachment to sense gratification is going to lead me to a very dangerous predicament, and therefore the devotee doesn't take any chance. So therefore, a devotee makes a commitment that okay, let me not try out material algorithms because they are going to be very risky. Therefore, let me stick on to the association of devotees and to the service of Krishna. Only it will be saved from further sense gratification. So when Prabhupada is saying here, you see, Maya is very strong and Maya harasses. So the devotee understands, okay, if I take to these material algorithms, then I'll be it is very difficult to get out of it. Not only one is harassed, one becomes maddened. And so sinful activity is not a one-time phenomena. Sinful activity is a cascade. Many times Krishna consciousness becomes a one-time phenomena. Why? Because the person is so much conditioned. The person at best is just one time Krishna consciousness gets tired. But sense gratification, one is maddened. So one goes on and on and on and on and on. That loop to break is very difficult. If that loop is broken, somehow or the other, by the mercy of the devotees of the Lord, one should take it as a very grand opportunity and don't try to get back into the loop again. So why a devotee grabs onto the lotus feet of the Lord? Because the devotee understands that only if I am at the lotus feet of the Lord, I'll be saved from the onslaught of my Shakti. But if I'm not at the lotus feet of the Lord, finished. It's just a matter of time. 52. Dehi agno jita sadvargo nechan karmani karyate koshakara ivatmanam karmana ach. So one of the difficulties you mentioned in the previous verse also is that uh, see, the previous verse to say it doesn't matter whether one is presently happy or is miserable or is lamenting or is fearful. Why? Because everything is temporary and everything will push forward the transmigration. And this transmigration is a very risky process because even if person is coming in the material world on the ground of piety, one is getting so much bombarded with material attractions that so many bodies will get prepared. One little desire. Prabhupada, that's why Prabhupada used to say, one little desire of eating a rasgulla, then you come in this material world again. And when one comes in this material world, then one has to, no, one will eat the rasgulla, but the remaining so many years of life, one will desire so many things and get caught up. Very risky place. So that's why devotee doesn't hanker for anything, neither a body of a demigod, nor a body of Brahmaji, doesn't desire for any such body like that. The devotee desires to get out of this material world. Very dangerous. Therefore, it is said that take responsibility and only have the desire to satisfy Krishna. Okay, now let's see here. The foolish embodied living entity, inept at controlling his senses and mind, is forced to act according to the influence of the modes of nature against his desires. He is like a silkworm that uses its own saliva, to create a cocoon and then becomes trapped in it with no possibility of getting out. The living entity traps himself in a network of his own fruitive activities and then can find no way to release himself. Thus, he is always bewildered and repeatedly he dies. Purpose? As already explained, the influence of the modes is very strong. The living entity entangled in different types of fruitive activities like a silkworm trapped in a cocoon. Getting free is very difficult unless he is held by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Prabhupada very clearly explains get out of this mental entanglement is very difficult. On one's own, it is not possible. Like a person who is fallen in the deep dark well, a family life is called the deep dark well, that the person cannot come out oneself. A rope has to be sent by the devotee of the Lord. Prabhupada said this rope is what the the words of the devotee, instructions of the devotee are like the rope. So therefore, only in following Anumimam Sati, only in following, uh, is there any hope that we will be brought out of this deep dark well? Otherwise, there is no hope. And therefore, Prabhupada is, I mean, the example which is being used here of silkworm is very apt. By one's own activities, one is making one's life bound and miserable. See, all these modes are very dangerous. Why? Because, see, the mode of goodness, yields complacency. When one becomes complacent, then one may not be so much alert and uh, you can say defending or alert and awake, and therefore the passion will creep in. That's the straight formula. One goes in mode of goodness is complacency. Complacency, one is not alert enough, and one is not alert, what will happen? The disease will creep in. Mode of passion, one is less thinking. One's thinking ability is short-sighted. Because of short-sightedness, one will again not be able to see things properly. So short-sightedness is what? The lack of discrimination is not there much. And because the lack of discrimination is not there, one will one has a proclivity to choose ignorance because one will not be able to differentiate what is what properly. The short-sightedness. So therefore, it's just a matter of time. See, because one is rushing, in passion, one is rushing and not thinking much. Because one is rushing and not thinking much, one may step on a wrong place, which is ignorance. Just like sometimes it is said, okay, don't spend too much time, or don't spend time on the internet. That is the best strategy. But it is said, okay, don't spend too much time. Somebody is addicted to spending a lot of time. He says, no, 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 I'm not seeing anything bad. I'm just fluffing around. Fluffing around, fluffing around, fluffing around, fluffing around. One may enter a prohibited avenue. That is the point. So passion will lead to ignorance. Therefore, the best algorithm is what? To add a spiritual master. Then what will happen? Then whatever comes first, we have the spiritual master. Can I take this? Say this poison. Okay, I'll not take that. So it one gets saved. So one says, the special master, oh, special master, this is very nice for me. What do you say? He'll say, nonsense, this is poison for you. Get lost. Throw it off. Okay, I have to follow. Throw it off. So we see that therefore these modes are dangerous candidates. So one cannot say, no, no, I'm in mode of goodness. No, this is the mistake which many times many devotees also do. They feel that they are advanced. They are now well situated. They are stay put. It is not stay put. It's just mode of goodness. That's it. We are waking up early. We are not stay put. One may say, no, I'm attending morning program, very steady and stable. No, 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 sir. For morning program, we're only coming in the mode of goodness. We're rising early, sleeping early. A lot of purification is yet to happen. So when one thinks one is stay put, then one is actually going towards complacency. Then what will happen? Passion will creep in. Then what will happen? Ignorance will creep in. Then what will happen? Ignorance will increase. Then what will happen? The effect of the purification effect of the practices of bhakti will be marred because one will become very sluggish in the practices of bhakti. So these modes are very dangerous. That is why we have to go beyond these modes. Let's read further. So getting free is very difficult. Why it is difficult? This is why it is difficult. Because any mode it will degrade us. This is difficult. The goodness will welcome passion, and welcome gives the way. I mean, passion gives the way to ignorance. That's why getting out is very difficult. One may say, no, no, I am in goodness. I am in goodness. Are you remain in goodness? Passion will capture the whole territory. That's why fall down is them. Everybody says, hey, this devotee is all good. What happened to him? What happened? 2 years, everything is, there is an empty shell, like that. So one is, these modes are very dangerous actually. That's why one can only get out of it like a silkworm cocoon. One gets trapped. No way to release oneself. नहीं कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातु तिष्ठति अकर्मकृत् कार्यते हि आवश्यक कर्म गुणे स्वाभाविकैर्बलात्. Not a single living entity can remain unengaged, even for a moment. One must act by his natural tendency according to the three modes of material nature. Because this natural tendency forcibly makes him work in a particular way. That is why Srila Prabhupada established that devotees make their lives in service very busy, because at any given moment, if there is no anxiety for any seva which is lurking, in our consciousness, then the natural tendency is the modes, and the modes will propose something. Because of that, then we are acting according to the modes, we are furthering our entanglement. That's what happens. Perfect. The Swabhavika, or one's natural tendency, is the most important factor in action. One's natural tendency is to serve, because a living entity is an eternal servant of God. The living entity wants to serve, but because of his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord, he serves under the modes of material nature and manufactures various modes of service such as socialism, humanitarianism, altruism. However, one should be enlightened in the tenets of Bhagavad Gita and accept the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that one give up all natural tendencies for material service under different names and take to the service of the Lord. One's original natural tendency is to act in Krishna consciousness, because our real nature is spiritual. The duty of a human being is to understand that since he is essentially spirit, he must abide by the spiritual tendency and not be carried away by the material tendencies. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore sung, Miche Maya Ravashe, Yacha Bheshe Khachaha Buddhu Bhubhai. My dear brothers, you are being carried away by the waves of material energy and suffering in many miserable ways. Sometimes you are drowning in the waves of material nature, and sometimes you are tossed like a swimmer struggling in the ocean. As confirmed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, this tendency to be battered by the waves of the Maya can be changed to one's original natural tendency, which is spiritual. When the living entity comes to understand that he is eternally Krishna Das, a servant of God or Krishna, Shiva Krishna Das, Vishwas Karle tu Adukha Nai. If instead of serving Maya under different names, one turns his service attitude towards the Supreme Lord, he is then safe and there is no more difficulty. If one returns to his original natural tendency, the human form of life, so by understanding the perfect knowledge given by Krishna himself in the Vedic literature, so one's life will be successful. So to be safe and successful, one should return to one's natural service. So therefore, we have to do every possible struggle to save oneself from being carried away by the material tendency. So that is why the Acharyas and the Shastras explain that you see that this path of spiritual life, one has to be very attentive and alert. Interestingly, although we are attentive and alert, on our own we don't have the strength to combat also. But we can borrow and derive the strength from the Lord by our dependence. Read further. लब्ध्वा निमित्तम् अव्यक्तम् व्यक्ताव्यक्तं भवति यथा योनि यथा बीजम् स्वभावेन बलीयशा. The fruitive activities a living being performs, whether pious or impious, are the unseen cause for the fulfillment of his desires. This unseen cause is the root for all the living entities' bodies. Because of its intense desire, the living entity takes birth in a particular family and receives a body which is either like that of his mother or like that of the father. So the gross and subtle bodies are created according to his desire. The gross body is a product of the subtle body. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.6, Yam yam vapi smaram bhava, tachyate ante kalevaram, tam tame bhakante, tada tad bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers, when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. The atmosphere of the subtle body at the time of death is created by the activities of the gross body. Therefore, the gross body acts during one's lifetime, the subtle body acts at the time of death. The subtle body, which is called linga, is the body of desire, is the background for the development of a particular type of gross body, which is either like that of one's mother or like that of one's father. According to Rig Veda, if at the time of sex, the secretions of the mother are more profuse than those of the father, the child will receive a female body. The secretions of the father are more profuse than the mother, the child receives a male body. These are subtle laws of nature which act according to the desire of the living entity. If a human being is starts to change a subtle body by developing a consciousness of Krishna, at the time of death, the subtle body will create a gross body in which he will be a devotee of Krishna. Or if it's still more perfect, then he will not take any material body, but will immediately get a spiritual body and return home back to Godhead. That is the process of transmigration of the soul. Therefore, instead of trying to unite human society through pacts for sense gratification that can never be achieved, it is people how to become Krishna conscious and Radha. This is true now and indeed at any time. Yeah. So Prabhupada is very powerfully saying the gross body is the deciding factor during one's lifetime, and at the time of death, only the subtle body is the deciding factor. So one has a whole life to change the subtle body. Every activity of Krishna consciousness is potent blow on the subtle body. It is changing the subtle body, and therefore, so it is changing the subtle body, and therefore a devotee should take pleasure in being more and more active in service to Krishna, understanding that this only can change my subtle body. Therefore, let me uh, uh, let me engage myself or put myself in the fire of the Sankirtan mission. Because the more I put myself in the fire of the Sankirtan mission, the more my subtle body will change. And only if the subtle body change will I be able to get delivered from this entanglement. Otherwise, the subtle body, if we are not able to touch the subtle body has decided ghastly, millions of ghastly lives for us already. So that's a very dangerous predicament. Okay, I think let's stop here for today then. We started at 9:30 or so, 9:35. So we'll continue for the reading next week. Saraswati Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.